Good evening, good night, and good morning. I'm Wenxing of the National Human Rights Museum of Taiwan, and I'm also the moderator of this online forum today. This evening, we are hosting the sixth talk for the FIHRM-AP Forum on Migration and Human Rights in 2021. The topic is introducing human rights issues concerning migrant workers to campus, migrant worker life, and the experience of promoting ethnic landscape course on campus. This talk is also a part of the promotional events of Shared Journey online exhibition. Our speaker today is Annie Kwan from 1095 Culture Studio. Thank you, Annie, for accepting our invitation. And before we start, I would like to go over the background information. The online forum will be hosted and moderated by me, and then the talk will last for 40 minutes, and we reserve 5 to 10 minutes for participants to ask questions. Please feel free to leave your comments and questions in the chat box in the upper right corner, and after the talk, I will consolidate all your questions and have them answered all together by the speaker. The event will be supported by simultaneous interpreting from Mandarin into English. To switch to English channel, please use your language floor in the lower right corner of your screen. Shared Journey exhibition is jointly organized by the National Human Rights Museum of Taiwan and members of the Asian and Pacific Sites of Conscience Network, and there are 12 member organizations representing 7 countries. Latika Hadirachi is the curator, and she is from Sri Lanka. Different from the official and mainstream narratives, the exhibition focuses on the hidden, marginalized, disappeared voices in histories and societies, bringing forth human rights issues and narratives concerning race, gender, class, colonialism, privilege in histories and civic societies. Ever since National Human Rights Museum founded FIHRM-AP, the museum has dedicated itself to engaging, collaborating, and co-learning activities in order to build a network of human rights education and issues in Asia-Pacific region. The Migration and Human Rights Co-Learning Workshop last year focuses on the migration and human rights issues of our time. The online exhibition offers a glimpse of the real-life stories of migrant workers in Taiwan. They share a day at work filmed on their own mobile phones, juxtaposing the meager, subhuman depiction of migrant workers in public consciousness. They share photos of themselves that highlight their resilience in the face of such harsh conditions, their dignity, and their humanness. Now let's talk about our topic today. As mentioned before, it is our hope to expand the connection between our audience and Asia-Pacific region. The silver lining of human rights issues in our daily lives help us seek the potential for mutual understanding and acceptance. Migrant workers are a part of our daily life. More than 700,000 migrant workers from Southeast Asia plays a critical role across all industries in Taiwan. They also are the main caregiver in a lot of Taiwanese families. While they're so important, they appear to be so familiar and stranger to so many people. It is ever so important to teach the next generation about migrant workers issues through a game in the educational setting. We are very honored today to have Annie Kwan from 1095 Culture Studio as our guest speaker. The members of 1995 Culture Studio have delivered thousands of educational sessions on campus over the years. Through a role-playing board game, they guide students of different age groups to walk in other people's shoes and experience the challenges a migrant worker face when he or she comes to Taiwan. The journey allows empathy and plants the seed of human rights values in their heart. Now I'm going to give the floor to Annie. Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Annie. It's really my pleasure to be invited over to give the last talk of this Migration and Human Rights series of forum. And the topic of my talk today is introducing human rights issues on campus concerning migrant worker. So we have released and published a board game. It's called Migrant Worker Life. And we also help schools in Taichung, Taipei, Kaohsiung, from the north, central, and southern part of Taiwan, so that the students can get to know some of the ethnic landscapes on campus and outdoor in different parts of the city, so they can learn about the lives of migrant workers. And today I'm going to focus mainly on the board game, because we started to promote the game, the ethnic course, after we started promoting it. Because of the pandemic, it was halted. So I'm going to focus today on the board game. And because we have some participants from different countries, so I'm going to use a English presentation slides. And for those who are from Mandarin backgrounds, you can just listen to my presentation. So to give you a little bit of background about our board game and about our organization. So in 2006, we founded the organization and focused on the educational side of migrant worker human rights issues. In 1992, Taiwan officially introduced migrant workers from Southeast Asia. And in terms of migrant workers' human rights, the awareness among the public was still low. So it was mostly the labor rights and religious groups pioneering in the field of protecting their human rights. And there is the turning point after 2001. We saw in Taiwan that gradually there are more and more discussion about migrant worker issues. And that actually stimulates the growth of a lot of civic groups supporting their rights. So after 2010, a lot of them enhanced on the importance of cultural exchange. So we see them cropping up over the years, and we are also one of these organizations. About 1095, so 1095 Culture Studio was founded in Taichung City, in central part of Taiwan, in 2016, and we are based in central Taiwan because all of our members have spent a lot of their times of their life in central Taiwan. And we also have this passion about migrant worker issues, and we felt that there was a shortage of resources for them. Therefore, we built this platform which helped to connect Taiwanese people and migrant workers, and we facilitate cultural exchanges on the two sides. And these exchanges in the way can raise awareness among the general public, and also the platform can actually help a dialogue and conversation happening in Taiwan. So around 2 years ago, from 2016 to 2018, we have tried different initiatives in order to facilitate people's understanding of migrant worker issues. And that serves as the root and the nutrition for our later development of educational materials. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the efforts we have facilitated in the past and the materials we have developed. So in early days of our organization, one iconic event we have organized is the mobile library campaign. So started in 2005, the Brilliant Time Southeast Asia Bookstore initiated this campaign across many cities across Taiwan. So we are one of this site for this mobile library. We found that in Taichung, there is actually a gathering spot. It's called the ASEAN Square in central Taiwan. So this actually is a commercial built complex with a lot of space for migrant workers to gather here with their friends, spend time with the friends. So that somehow help to build a commercial circle here in the building. However, the general public didn't seem to be very welcoming, and there was a shortage of leisure facilities at this place. So we would like to generate more discussions and give the migrant workers more information and resources. So we have set up a pop-up library every Sunday, and one of the success indicator of this campaign is that this is actually a very good approach to have access to the migrant workers. They worked with us at the square, so we can actually promote some of the native language books of Southeast Asian countries, and we also help them and provided some of the facilities so they can have their own legal public hearings at the square. So this is an unforgettable experience. In addition to these companionship and these campaigns and activities, it is also important to us the pastimes they have for migrant workers with limited day offs, because when it comes to the new southbound policies issued by Taiwanese government, we found that even though there are a lot of events in different cities, they actually work with PR firms to just burn through the budget, and the content was not very inviting, and they needed to mobilize the migrant workers to these events. We would like to help them and empower them to organize their own events. And as NGOs, our role is to accompany them and to support them to do what they want. So this is actually a Kartini Day. It's a day celebrating a female hero from Indonesia. So we have a group of female migrant workers who organize events to celebrate this Kartini Day. And this is also a holiday in Indonesia that celebrates women's rights. And also the female caregivers, they can really project themselves onto this heroine figure. So by organizing these events, the experience empowered them while they're working overseas. And in preparation, every year, I actually see them show their resilience and their power in organizing these events. And for 1095 Cultural Studio, we actually also organizes mentoring classes. It was actually quite a surprise that a lot of people, caregivers, domestic caregivers, and factory workers, institutional caregivers signed up for these classes. Maybe it was by coincidence. Mostly it was caregivers who signed up for this course, and that's naturally become a purely female class. So in addition to these classes and courses, I would leverage teaching tools to talk to them about labor rights and female issues, and talk about their relationship with their mother country. So even though this is on the surface a mentoring class, but when it comes to the actual operation itself in nature, it is a support group. So we have been operating this mentoring class for 4 to 5 years. And because of this mentoring class, mostly it was those caregivers who have access to day offs are allowed to come to our class. So I have heard them complaining about the disputes with their employees. And comparatively speaking, they have a better mastery of Mandarin speaking skills. However, for most of domestic caregivers, they didn't have access to day offs guaranteed by the law. They could only get probably 1 day off per month. So I really want to have access to their work environment. So we have taken up some of the cases commissioned by Taichung City. So we work side by side with these migrant domestic caregivers. So this is a family setting in this picture. So this is an instruction setting. So when we made plan for this project, we would like to have one interpreter, a social worker, and also a Taiwanese caregiver as the instructor. So this is a 3-person team, so we can enter into the family setting, aka their work environment. So even though this is sort of like an instruction course, this is the opportunity for us to have access into their work environment, into their workplace, so we can actually hear them talking about their experience, the struggles, the conflicts they have with their employees. So we can actually clarify and see more clearly about the issues of long-term care here in Taiwan. And this has become a good base of resources for us to promote educational materials. So this is a long-term issue because these Taiwanese people, they have formed a pattern of employing domestic caregivers, and also the elders in the family would feel that they can actually buy their labor, and it's difficult to really sway and change their attitude. And for Taiwanese people, when it comes to appreciation of culture, they are more prone to soft approach. We can only use soft approach to entice them in the issues of migrant workers. So we start to think about a good way and good model to promote the educational purpose we have. So we have soft approach. We also have hard approach. So one soft approach is to offer guided tour.
Migrant workers have to finish so many things in this area. So this guided tour has been very popular. Many schools have been willing to bring students from one class or even the entire school to participate in our guided tour. And this also influenced the way we designed the board game. Now moving on to the ethnic landscape course. Because of the pandemic, we realized that some schools started to cancel the guided tour reservations. However, these topics are still relevant and important. These topics need to be brought to students still. So when the pandemic was still stable, we brought these topics into schools. For example, we recorded some sound from the areas, and we simulated the street views and brought them into the classroom. Now you're seeing a group of students sitting on the ground, and on the screen, this is the main hall of Taipei Railway Station. The design of this course is that, well, at the beginning, these elementary students didn't know where it was, and we started to play some environmental sound from Taipei Railway Station. For example, when a migrant worker walks past, some people may talk about their smell or asking why they are sitting on the ground, on the floor of the main hall. And the sound includes different languages from different countries. So we tried not to be judgmental at first. We just wanted to play these sounds to the students, and then the teacher gradually encouraged the students to talk about what they thought when they heard the sound, what they felt. I think this kind of class, the ethnic landscape course, is relatively suitable for children. We cannot bring them directly on site, and we cannot do so much explanation on the spot, but we can in advance provide some background knowledge and information for these kids so that they already immerse themselves in the environment. They would think that if they were themselves migrant workers, what would they feel? Now I'm going to move on to the board game, which I will spend more time on today. The board game is called Migrant Worker Life, which was launched in 2018. So 3 years or so has passed since then. I'm going to focus on the design process of this game because the design process, in my opinion, was a very important learning opportunity because we needed to cooperate with many organizations. We also interviewed many migrant workers. So what I'm going to say will serve as reference for you. At first, we positioned this game as a role-playing board game. Players take turns to pick a card to experience the difficulties of migrant workers' lives in Taiwan. These difficulties and these lives have different aspects. Some are good, others are not that good. So players can experience different working locations. They can experience, for example, overtime situations for different jobs. And in addition to work, what do migrant workers do for leisure activities? So these cards include real life scenarios. So it's a very immersive board game. These are the images, the cards from the board game. On the right, these are role cards. Players can pick a card, so it can be a caregiver from Indonesia, or a factory worker from Vietnam, or a fisherman from the Philippines, or a construction worker from Thailand. On the left-hand side, these are different environments and incidents. Well, there are 4 categories: working environment, overtime incidents, leisure activities, and festivities and gatherings. Well, why was this board game created? Well, because we are now in a new phase of Taiwan's education. Taiwan now, in 2019, Taiwan had a new curriculum guideline launched. To us, this new curriculum guidelines, especially for science, the social science domain, made a lot of change because it started to focus more on soft issues like culture, multiculturalism, civil participation, and ethnic issues. So such exploration became very important, and civic issues and exploration of the society became an elective course according to the curriculum guidelines. So migrant worker issues became also an important topic, so teachers could use this board game in their classrooms. Well, at first, a Taiwanese publisher invited our studio to design this board game. Because of their invitation, we also started to think about that in addition to migrant worker service and in addition to presentations, we could do something else. We could start with schools. We could reach out to students who are developing and cultivating their viewpoints and worldviews. So, however, at the time and even now, I think that Taiwanese students are only have partial knowledge about multiculturalism. They somehow lack empathy. And at the time, we found that both teachers and students were like this. Even though social science teachers had more awareness and had received training on these topics, but they didn't have much teaching aid and materials to use. So the publisher invited us to design this board game for these teachers. Before the design of the board game, we needed to first position this board game. This teaching material would have what kind of effect on students? At the time, we thought that through this board game, we wanted Taiwanese people, the general public, could have more empathy and put themselves into others' shoes and empathize with migrant workers' lives in Taiwan. And also, once we can empathize with their lives, we can start to try to think about, for example, we play the game and we have emotions about these unjust situations. So maybe after the game, people can have reflections and even taking some actions. So this is the steps that we designed. We hope that gradually the board game can achieve these different milestones one by one. This is the third year of the board game. We are starting to see such results. The first step is that through this board game, players and participants can experience migrant workers' lives, everything that could happen to migrant workers, and players start to empathize with migrant workers' situation. And players start to think about why they feel injustice in some situations. In the past, they didn't feel such injustice, but now with this board game, they feel this kind of injustice. And the teacher plays a very important role because the teacher needs to guide the students towards the real life situations. For example, he or she can provide some real life news to connect students to real life topics and issues and have reflections. For example, this role that you have, at some point, if he or she receives some help, maybe the result would be different. So we also provide some materials for teachers to guide students. The last part, the fifth step, is perhaps more difficult, but the result could be very fruitful too, which is about putting the experiences into actions and practices. This is for senior high school students and even college students can be a bit challenging because usually schools don't have time to achieve the last milestone because we are often invited for 2 hours of activities and classes. So we can perhaps finish reflections with students, but when it comes to turning these reflections into taking actions, this is very challenging.
So after the discovery of this issue, starting from 2018, we would host annual teacher training workshop and youth training workshop across Taiwan in the north, central, and southern region. For the students in high school, if they're interested in taking actions, they can take part in the workshop and they can also have hands-on experience, which can help them to develop actual campaigns and initiatives. So this is actually a collaborative process. So for these cards, we worked with different organizations. So for example, so when it comes to working environment, we have to collect 4 professions: factory workers, domestic caregivers, and long haul fishing workers. We have to cover these 4 professions. We have to interview migrant workers and different labor rights NGOs. We interview them and collect information, materials from them, and translate these materials into something that is easy, simple, and reader-friendly for high school students. So once they draw randomly the card, they can feel right away they are caught in this work environment, and how that would have impact on their mental health and physical health, negatively or positively. And this is overtime event card set, and we worked with employees and brokers to develop this set of cards. After interviewing with employers, we also include news stories. So we listed the different types of overtime according to different professions. So for domestic caregivers, they have all kinds of overtime work types. Basically, for them, this is a 7-day per week and 24 hours a day work, and because they are not protected by Labor Rights Act, the Basic Labor Rights Act, so they don't have off time and off days to themselves, and they would be asked to do works that are not on their contract. For example, to work in the restaurants or the eateries operated by their employers, and they would be asked to work on their day offs, even though the family is going to have an outing, and they were asked to take care of the elders. And also, when it comes to leisure time activities, it comes from our long-term relationship observation with the migrant worker friends we have. For example, we have some physical needs. When we were instructing students on these activities, students would feel quite shy to talk about these issues. But if we just treat it as normal kind of need, then the students will feel this is just as normal as it gets to have physical needs or sexual needs. So there are spaces in cities that cater to their sexual needs. So the teachers would ask the students about whether the migrant workers can actually get pregnant while they're working in Taiwan, and can they settle down in Taiwan? So these are the questions we can answer right away at the class. So the students, they can actually sense that these people who come to work in Taiwan, they're just as normal as anyone else, so they have all kinds of needs, and those needs should also be accepted by the general public in Taiwan. And also they have sports needs, like playing basketball. So who are our target audiences? So this is a pie chart listing the target audience we have so far encountered to. So the majority of the player of the board game are still senior high school students, because the publisher we work with is actually a high school textbook publisher. So they are pioneering in this field, and many schools started to work with us, and to our surprise, slowly more and more adult organizations, for example, like community college or general college and university departments, feel that they can also leverage this board game to facilitate discussions on university classes at university settings. So that is actually quite to our surprise that more and more universities started to feel the need to allocate some budget to fulfill their social responsibilities. So they started to introducing similar courses, and we can actually help them to design action plans. So we have a comprehensive package covering from a board game, guided tour, and to the end point of delivering a migrant worker friendly action plan. So we worked with a lot of universities and colleges. And in recent years, we started to have some social workers and social welfare organizations would use these cards and board games for their internal training, and also some police institutions, police agencies would also leverage our board game. So these developments are actually quite to our surprise, because we thought that it was enough to actually firmly rooted the board game on campus. But we started to see that more and more organizations, adult organizations, are having their interest, showing their interest in this game. So we are also hoping that we can develop the games for adults as well. So we have one instructor. We also need to have one set of presentation to guide the players. So these are the feedbacks we have received so far from the participants. So there are 5 types of feedback from our participants. So some of them talk about the game design because this is actually a very heavy topic, and we don't really offer a strong sense of game. You will feel like a strong sense of constraints because the participants or the players would feel their options are limited. So for the players who want to, so we have professional players who told us that because this is actually quite a limiting game. So that is exactly what was experienced and what is experienced by migrant workers after they come to Taiwan. And the second type of feedback is the empathy generated throughout the process. And this is the objective of the game. And after empathy, they started to have reflections on the conditions of migrant workers, because for students, they would feel, they would have heavy hearts. And sometimes it was difficult for them to get rid of that heavy sense of feeling after they played the game. So that will need instructors and teachers support to help them to really guide them through that emotional lows, so they can help the student to come back and talk about why they would feel this upset feeling, and which part of the game went wrong, or which part of the experience went wrong. So we heard a lot of students, they can freely talk about the right solutions for the conditions they experience in the board game. And after we collect our thoughts, we would give them the information available so far. For example, many students would say, why didn't these migrant workers lodge complaints, and why didn't they take it to the streets? So we can tell them that we actually have this hotline dedicated for migrant workers, but there are issues with this hotline over a long period of time, so that migrant workers distrust this hotline. So these kind of exchange on the one hand, can actually help students freely voice their doubts, their questions, and also they can get their answers. And of course, they will feel very sorry that these are unsatisfactory answers because there are so many flaws in the system. And we guide that sense of regret to the next step. The next stage would be action plan. So the fourth type of feedback comes from teachers because for this board game, they have derived from it different ways of application. Only the work environment set allow them to spend a whole class talking about it. And how do we take the teachers and students to the next stage? After they have the empathy, after they have the reflection, how do we translate that into actions? So if it's applicable or appropriate, we will use post-its and posts to take them through different stages so they can talk about the roles of these people involved, the characters involved in the game, and what would their behaviors be like. So once we have tackled the relationship and connections between different characters, if we are students, if we are teachers, if we are a social worker, and what can we do? So these are the photos taken during our workshop of action plan designing. So those were the photos before 2020, before the global pandemic, because in 2021, especially after May, we had a rise of diagnosed cases. So that took away our opportunity to work on campus. So a lot of teachers have been asking that the game should be digitalized. It is also one of the items on our agenda, but we still need to continue to develop these materials. We have accumulated a lot of materials for teachers. We help them to find and search for materials and how to build a media news coverage literacy. So we have accumulated a lot of teaching plans. So from June to August, we have been organizing across Taiwan online teachers workshop. So the series of teachers workshop allow us to work with Taiwan History Museum in Tainan. And by working with NGOs, museums, online, we can continue to introduce these issues onto campus. And we are leveraging online workshop to help the teachers to first familiarize themselves with the issue. So this is actually another screenshot of our online teachers workshop. We show them different issues faced by migrant workers. So while they are taking this online workshop, some teachers become quite active and they like asking questions, which is quite different from a physical in-person workshop. In the past, I thought these teachers are quite conservative and they were very shy about asking questions, but this online workshop helped to open them up for questions. And they would also ask us to introduce them to the local ethnic landscapes, the restaurants frequented by, or religious spaces would be frequented by the migrant workers. So we would ask the teachers and new immigrants to give them a guided tour online to take them through some of the ethnic landscapes. So this is the train station area of Taoyuan. So that's my presentation to give you a little bit of sense about this board game. After its development in 2018, our objective is to help people to learn to walk in other people's shoes through this board game. However, it takes a lot of collaboration to develop a game like this, and it also takes right key players to help us to introduce this game to the campus. We also need teachers, textbook publishers, and we also need feedback to make revisions along the way. So we have teachers working with us as partners along the way.
Annie, you have heard from students different action plans from students. So could you share with us those action plans? And there's one question in the chat box asking Annie, the cooperation, well, you mentioned that you cooperate with National History Museum. So what is your cooperation model in general with museums? And I know that 1095 also has cooperated with Laogong Museum in Kaohsiung. So could you talk about your cooperation model? Now I'm giving back the floor to you. Thank you, Wenxin. So first of all, I'd like to answer Wenxin's question first. Will we have time and efforts to guide students to design their action plans? What kind of action plans do students in general come up with? Any examples? Well, let me give you an example from 2019. I mentioned that usually time is limited with students. There's usually only 2 hours. So after 1 year of activities on campus, we put forward a workshop for action plans. I still remember that at the time about 20 or so teenagers registered, and there were 3 results. The first action plan focused on transportation. The teenagers from that group realized that, through their field work and interviews, these teenagers realized that migrant workers take trains and buses to go wherever they want to go. But when it comes to recognizing, for example, the destination or the direction of a train or in a station, things are a bit challenging for them. For example, Vietnamese migrant workers just tend to refer to Ziqiang trains as fast trains, and they just use speed to refer to different types of train. So these teenagers focus on Vietnamese migrant workers, and they designed an explanation system to explain the direction of direction systems in a train station, and also the destination of buses and trains. They made a brochure, and we used some funding to print these brochures and hand them out to Vietnamese migrant workers in Taichung railway station. Another group of teenagers designed a chat box online, the instant messaging application. They believe that some caregivers could not have days off, but if they want to know what are the clinics, what are some other shops available nearby, or if they have questions, they can use this chat box online with some buttons in order to know about different places nearby. And there can also be some one-on-one conversations between the migrant worker and also a service representative. This is just a prototype at the time, but at the time there wasn't such a chat box online. However, after 2019, the Ministry of Labor Affairs designed such a chat box in order to publicize different policies. So that was a very cool idea from these teenagers. And another group of teenagers had medical background, and they found that when migrant workers enter a hospital or a clinic, they need to fill out a form because they are first-timers, and they need to fill out their medical history. These forms usually don't have a foreign language. Even if they do, it's only in English, but many migrant workers don't understand English. So they focused on Indonesian migrant workers, and they designed such a form with Indonesian so that they can fill out the form more easily. And they cooperated with the National Defense Medical College. These are some examples of action plans. And we thought that this was a very cool thing because within 1 week's workshop, they learned to carry out field work, interviews, and eventually there was a press conference for their presentations so that these teenagers' parents and even some media could come to listen to their action plans. As for the question about our cooperation model with museums, let me talk about our cooperation with the Labor Museum in Kaohsiung in 2019. It was a cooperation on the board game. This museum has always been an important museum about migrant workers' life stories and history. However, at the time they lacked materials about migrant workers' stories and history. They wanted to invite migrant workers to visit them, but at the time it wasn't it was a bit difficult. So the museum first invited us to have several sessions in which we invited Kaohsiung citizens to come into the museum and talk about migrant worker issues. And during that year, we put forward, we designed promoters of migrant worker issues. And it turned out that many university students and teachers came to register to participate. Some of their backgrounds were related to migrant worker issues, while others didn't, but they all felt a sense of responsibility to promote this issue to their friends and families. So the museum invited us to organize this workshop to train these promoters as seed promoters so that they could further promote migrant worker issues elsewhere. And 1 year later, we wanted to help encourage more migrant workers to visit the museum. At the time, the museum only had a Chinese explanation system, so it would be very challenging for migrant workers to visit the museum. So we did some, in National Taiwan Museum, there was a model that we could follow. So they had trained many tour guides, many docents speaking migrant workers' first languages. So we used this model to also train museum docents speaking migrant workers' mother languages. After the training, we organized an activity, some kind of carnival for migrant workers to enjoy the concert. We invited a band, a migrant worker band, and also we invited migrant workers to listen to the museum docents. And the result was very positive. It was a 3-year program, and this year we developed it further into exhibitions. The Labor Museum invited me to interview some organizations in Kaohsiung and in Pingtung counties who service migrant workers. I interviewed them, listening to their stories and experience. We wanted to know the difficulties of migrant workers, and this exhibition will take place at the end of this year. So this is about the Labor Museum in Kaohsiung. This is a very important learning opportunity for us because we learn how to cooperate with the museum to organize activities, and also we learn how to train museum docents, and also we do research, we design exhibitions. We learn a lot of things from this experience. As for Taiwan History Museum, this is because during the pandemic, we still want to continue the training for teachers. We find that some museums has very good cultural reservoirs that we can use. So these museums apply for funding from the Ministry of Culture to establish such archives for teachers to use, but very few teachers know about these resources. So Taiwan History Museum connects to us, and our migrant worker related courses combine their program to establish a cultural memory archive. So their funding supports our series of courses. So I'd like to thank Taiwan History Museum to so flexibly use their funding for us. I think there are all sorts of different models when we cooperate with museums. It can be research-oriented, it can be activity-oriented, and all of these can be incorporated into course design. We feel very honored that we have tried many different approaches. So this is my response. If you have any further questions, feel free to post in the chat box. Thank you, Wenxing. Thank you, Annie, for your answers. Very good answers, very insightful. So when we museums and NGOs face human rights issues, we have different approaches, but we can cooperate and continue our work.
So if you have any further questions, feel free to leave them in the chat box. We can forward it to our speaker, and we also welcome you to reach out directly to 1095 Culture Studio. We started this online forum. This is a result of our workshop with NGOs. We have invited many field practitioners as our guest speakers for our online forum, and they have shared different topics on migration human rights. They talk about legal issues and the issues in practice, and they have shared a very first-hand experiences and challenges. We actually see museum practitioners and NGO practitioners approach the cause in different ways and address the issues of migrant workers and human rights. So this marks the last installment of our series of workshops. We're really grateful to our speakers. First, we are grateful to the speakers of INDA, of Taoyuan People's Association, and also the curator of Brilliance Bookstore, and also the Garden of Hope speaker, and also Camel from Tiwa, and also Wei Shen from Tifa, and also the Vietnamese Migrant Office pastor, and also Lei Han Le, Mr. Chiu of the Lei Han Le World Citizen Center. And also, lastly, we are grateful to Annie for giving us this fantastic talk. Without your support and your participation, it was impossible for us to be able to complete this journey together. And every time after our talk, and the videos will be uploaded after appropriate editing. They will be available on the website. So feel free to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Thank you for your participation. Even though this marks the last part of our series of talk. And lastly, I would like to express my gratitude to the two interpreters, Phoebe and Parker. Thank you for accompanying us through this journey, for giving us language support. Thank you very much for your participation. This marks the end of our series of online talks, and we really look forward that post the pandemic we can actually meet up in person, and we do encourage you to join us on this journey together. Thank you very much. Goodbye and see you soon.